When I was 5 years old, my parents died in a fire. I don't remember the flames, just the sound of breaking glass and someone's hand pulling me through the smoke. After that night, I was never alone, but I was never really whole either. My grandma Rose, who was 65 then, took the mornings. She made me brush my teeth with minty paste and pack lunch with apple slices. My grandma Elsie, a little younger at 63, took the evenings, soft music, gentle stories, a warm lap to cry in when the nightmares came back. They never lived in the same house, but they lived for me. They didn't fight, but they didn't speak. It was like I was the bridge between two cliffs. For years, I asked why they took turns. They always smiled and said, "It's just what works best for everyone." And I believed them, because they were my grandmas, my entire world. Until I met Jamie. He was kind, funny, mysterious in the way old books smell. He loved old vinyl records and hated sugar in his coffee. He whistled the same tune Grandma Rose hummed when she sewed, and he tilted his head the same way Grandma Elsie did when she was curious about something. But I didn't connect the dots. Not until the night I brought him home to meet them. Had dinner at Rose's house, like always. Elsie came too, rare as that was. They hadn't been in the same room in over 15 years. Jamie was nervous, I was giddy. They were silent. Halfway through dessert, Rose dropped her fork. It clattered louder than thunder in that small kitchen. Elsie stood up, excused herself, and went out back to sit under the porch light. Jamie offered to help with dishes. I told him to go check on her instead. Rose grabbed my wrist the second we were alone. Her fingers were trembling. Her eyes looked wet but hard. "You need to come by tomorrow," she whispered. Without him, I nodded. I didn't know why, but my chest felt tight the entire night. The next day, both grandmas were waiting. Same table, same silence. A dusty photo album lay in front of them, one I had never seen before. Elsie opened it. On the first page was a photo of a man standing between the two of them. Same sharp jawline, same crooked smile, same eyes as Jamie. His name was Daniel. "He was the love of both our lives," Rose began. "But only one of us married him, and the other buried him," Elsie added quietly. I felt the room tilt. "What do you mean?" I asked. That's when Rose pulled out an old newspaper clipping. A small headline, faded ink. "Local man dies in mysterious drowning. 2 women present at scene." And underneath it, a photo of a younger Rose and Elsie, drenched in rain, staring at the camera. I stared at the article. My hands began to sweat. "You were both there when he died," I whispered, almost too afraid to hear the answer. Elsie nodded slowly, her lips pressed into a line. Rose didn't look away. "We were all young, too young to understand what jealousy and silence could do to a heart," Rose said. "Daniel loved us both, but he married me." Elsie's voice broke in, brittle as ice. "And he kept loving me." That silenced the room again. I swallowed, my voice shook. "Are you saying Jamie is related to Daniel? Is he my cousin or—" "No," Elsie said firmly, but then glanced at Rose. "That's what we're trying to figure out. That's why we need to tell you the whole truth before you marry him." My skin went cold. "What whole truth?" Rose reached into her handbag and pulled out something that looked like a folded letter, browned at the edges and sealed with an old wax stamp. "He wrote this the night before he died," she said, "and we've never opened it, not until now." She placed it on the table like it weighed more than gold. My fingers hesitated above the paper. Part of me didn't want to know. The other part, the bigger part, had to. I broke the seal. Inside, Daniel's handwriting curled like smoke across the page. "My dearest girls, if you're reading this, I'm likely gone. Not by accident, but because the truth finally caught up with me." I froze, my grandmas didn't speak, and I kept reading. "My dearest girls, if you're reading this, I'm likely gone. Not by accident, but because the truth finally caught up with me. I never meant to love both of you, but I did, in different ways. With different hearts. Rose, you gave me steadiness. A home, a reason to build something real. Elsie, you gave me fire, passion, the feeling that life could be wild and full of impossible choices. But here's what neither of you knew. I wasn't honest about who I really was." My breath hitched, I looked up. Both grandmas were staring at the letter, like it might burst into flames. "There was someone before both of you," the letter continued. "Her name was Clara. She lived in a small town near the coast. We were young and reckless. I left before I knew she was pregnant." I blinked, my hands trembling. My voice cracked. "Pregnant." Rose's eyes widened. Elsie went pale. "He had a son," I whispered, "before either of you." "Which means Jamie." I couldn't finish the sentence. Grandma Elsie whispered it for me. Jamie might be Daniel's grandson. The room spun. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but all I could do was sit there, staring at the words of a man who died before I ever knew him, and who might have just torn apart the life I was building. What if I'm engaged to my own cousin? The question burned in my brain like a fever. That's when Rose got up and walked to the cabinet. She pulled out a small, dusty wooden box. Inside it, a photo of Clara, and a name I had never heard before. Noah Ellis. He would have been your age now, Rose murmured. If he had a son. I stood, my knees shaking. I need to talk to Jamie. I drove straight to Jamie's flat with the letter in my purse and a storm in my chest. He opened the door barefoot, his t-shirt wrinkled, hair damp from a shower. He smiled. That familiar crooked smile, Daniel's smile, and suddenly I couldn't breathe. Not properly. Hey babe, what's? We need to talk. My voice was hoarse. His smile faded instantly. He stepped aside. I walked in, gripping the letter like a lifeline. We sat. I didn't touch him. Didn't kiss him. I opened the envelope and slid it across the coffee table. This is from my grandfather. I thought you didn't know your grandfather. I didn't, but apparently you might. He blinked, confused, then concerned. He opened the letter, read it silently. I watched his face drain of color, watched the lines of worry deepen across his forehead. When he got to Clara's name, he looked up. Clara Ellis. I flinched. You know that name. He nodded slowly. My dad's mom. She died before I was born. Her name was Clara Ellis. The world cracked open. What was your dad's name? Noah Ellis. Why? I stood up like someone had hit me from below. My knees buckled. Jamie rushed to steady me, but I pulled away. Jamie, you might be my cousin. He stepped back, like the word stung. We stared at each other, two people in love, possibly connected by blood, and a secret buried decades ago. I have to know the truth, I said. So do I, he whispered. He went to his drawer, pulled out an envelope. A DNA test. Already taken. Results arriving in 3 days. I stared at the envelope in Jamie's hand like it held our fate. 3 days. That's how long we had to sit in limbo, torn between the life we planned and the truth we couldn't outrun. He looked at me, eyes wide with fear and something deeper. I took it 2 weeks ago. My dad always said there was something strange about his birth records. No father's name. My grandma never talked about it. I needed to know. I sat back down, my chest aching. Why didn't you tell me? He swallowed hard. Because I didn't expect the name Daniel to show up in your story. I didn't expect your grandmas to know it. I didn't expect any of this. Neither did I. We didn't sleep that night, or the next. We just stayed near each other, close but not touching. Every time his fingers brushed mine, I pulled back. Not because I didn't love him, but because I did. And what if that love wasn't allowed? On the third morning, Jamie's phone buzzed. The DNA results were in. He opened the email with shaking hands. I sat on the edge of his bed, knees tucked into my chest, barely breathing. He scrolled, then froze. Well, I whispered. He turned to me slowly, his eyes unreadable. It says, Daniel Ellis was my grandfather. I felt like I was falling off a cliff. No air, no ground. So we are. Wait. He looked again, scrolling further. There's more. I blinked, my heartbeat thudded in my ears. It says Daniel had 2 sons, one from Clara. He paused. And another, unnamed, born later, adopted out. I felt cold all over. What does that mean? Jamie looked at me like he was seeing me for the first time. It means we're not cousins. If your mom or dad came from that second son. I stared at him, but I was told Daniel wasn't in my bloodline, that he only loved my grandmas, not that he fathered a child with them. Jamie blinked. What if one of them lied? The room went silent, and suddenly I knew what I had to do. I needed to ask one more question, the one they never answered. Who was my real grandfather? I drove straight to Grandma Elsie's house, my heart pounding so loud I thought it might echo off the windshield. She opened the door before I could knock, like she'd been waiting. You saw the results, she said softly without asking. I nodded. Daniel is Jamie's grandfather. But there's more. It says Daniel had another child, unnamed, adopted. Elsie's lips trembled. She stepped aside and motioned for me to come in. Inside, the living room felt smaller than ever. The air heavy, dusty with secrets. I need to know, I said, standing in front of her. Was Daniel my grandfather too? She didn't answer at first. She walked to the mantel and took down an old photograph. One I'd seen my whole life. My mother as a baby, cradled in Rose's arms. Only this time, I noticed something else. The corner of the photo was torn, jagged. Who was cut out of this picture? Elsie held the frame with both hands. Her eyes were glossy, but steady. Your mother was Daniel's daughter. Rose and he were together when it happened. But they were young and scared. And Daniel was already married to Clara by then. I stared at her, mouth open. So my mom was the second child. Elsie nodded. They put his name on no records. Gave her Rose's maiden name, to protect everyone. I dropped onto the couch, stunned. So that means Jamie and I aren't related. The words landed like thunder and silence at once. You're not cousins, she repeated. You're the grandchildren of two half-siblings. No shared parent, different mothers. Same father, technically you're not family. Not by blood that matters in that way. I let that sink in. The relief hit me so hard I started to cry, but the tears didn't feel like joy. They felt like grief. Grief for everything we almost lost. Grief for how long this truth had been buried. Why didn't anyone tell me any of this? I whispered. Elsie looked away. Because we were ashamed of how we handled it. And scared you'd hate us for keeping it hidden. I sat there quietly. But it's time, she added. You heard the whole story of what really happened the night Daniel died. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a second letter. This one older. Sealed with tape and stained with time. This isn't from Daniel, she said. It's from Rose. My hands shook as I reached for the letter. It was delicate, like it might disintegrate in my fingers. The envelope was unmarked, no date, no name, just brittle paper sealed with yellowing tape. Elsie sat beside me, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't speak, she just watched. I opened it slowly. Rose's handwriting was neat and slanted, familiar from the birthday cards. She always wrote with too many hearts. But this time, there were no hearts. My dearest Elsie, if you're reading this, I've finally found the courage I didn't have back then. Or maybe, time ran out, and I knew I couldn't leave this world without telling you what really happened. You've lived all these years, believing that Daniel drowned because of us. But that's not the full truth. I paused, feeling a chill rush up my spine. That night, he came to the lake to say goodbye. He told us he was going to disappear. Start fresh. He was tired of the lies, the hiding, the women, the guilt. He said he loved us both, but couldn't keep living with the pain he caused. He waded into the water before we could stop him. I thought it was a gesture, a moment, but then he just kept going. I followed him, Elsie whispered beside me, her voice barely there. You weren't even born yet. Your mother was just a little girl. And he was gone before I got to the edge. I kept reading. I blamed myself for years. You blamed yourself too. But neither of us pushed him in. Neither of us wanted him dead. He chose it, Elsie. He chose to disappear before the truth could destroy what we had left. I just hope one day, when she's old enough, we can tell her, tell our granddaughter that her family isn't perfect, but that we tried to protect her from pain, not truth. Love always. Rose. I sat in silence. My chest felt like it was collapsing inward. I had come here looking for answers, and I found them. Daniel wasn't murdered. He ran from guilt from us. And my grandmas, these two women who raised me from ashes, they carried that weight for decades. You should give that letter to Jamie, Elsie said softly. He deserves to know his grandfather wasn't a victim. He was a man who broke hearts and couldn't live with himself. I nodded. Then she said something I didn't expect. But you also deserve to know. Rose wasn't just doing this for Daniel. I turned to her slowly. What do you mean? Elsie looked at me, with eyes filled with something more than sorrow. Something like guilt. She made a choice that night too. And it wasn't just about saving your mother. It was about hiding something she feared would destroy you. I froze. What did she hide? Elsie got up, walked into the hallway, and returned with a small, locked wooden box. The key's in your mother's old music box, she said. You'll want to open it somewhere quiet, and alone. And just like that, the story I thought was finally ending, opened again. I drove home with the box in my lap, gripping the steering wheel with one hand and the weight of generations in the other. When I got inside, I went straight to the shelf and pulled out my mother's old pink music box, the one that played You Are My Sunshine. Inside the velvet-lined bottom was a tiny silver key. I unlocked the wooden box. Inside there were just two things, a folded note and a photograph. I picked up the photo first. It was my mother, maybe 18 or 19, standing beside a boy. They looked so much in love. She had Daniel's eyes, and he had my eyes. I didn't recognize him. Not until I flipped the photo over. To my first love, before the world got in the way, Noah, Jamie's father. My heart stopped. They were in love. Before anything else, before secrets, before lies. My mother and Jamie's father. They were the story before our story. I opened the note with shaking fingers. If you're reading this, it means you found the truth. I hope it doesn't break you. I only wanted to protect you from a world that has always hurt too easily and healed too slowly. Your mother and Jamie's father, Noah, were in love once. Maybe you and Jamie were always meant to finish what they couldn't. Just promise me you'll build something new, not repeat the ghosts we lived through. Grandma rose. I sat on the floor for a long time, holding the photo, holding the words. I thought about all the pain they carried, all the love that got buried to keep me safe. And I thought about Jamie, who didn't just look like Daniel. He loved like Daniel, fiercely, fully, fearfully. But we weren't them. And this was our story now. That night, I met Jamie under the willow tree at the lake. The same lake where Daniel walked into the water. The same place where everything once ended. I held out the photo and the letter. He read them in silence, then looked at me with something new in his eyes, not fear. Hope. So what now? He asked. I took his hand. We do what they couldn't. Which is, we stay, we love, and we don't run from the truth. He smiled, and this time, I didn't pull away.